Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, Mickey and Aurora have had a very eventful time of it recently, because I took them on a little trip. We went near Bath. Well, they didn't go to the opera, but I went to the opera. I had the pleasure and privilege, it has to be said, of attending a performance of Lucia di Lammermoor at Belcome Court, which has been wonderfully restored by the director and producer. Aurora, what is it? Aurora is being so naughty. Yes, what is it, honey? What is it? Sorry. The director and producer, Paul Weiland, and his wife, Caroline. Belcome Court, you can Google it. It's a wonderful classical house that they have restored marvelously. And I'm going to have posted 1 or 2 photographs so you can get a taste of the evening and of the setting. It's a magical setting. They and Michael Volpe, who has for years run Holland Park Opera very successfully, they have come up with the most wonderful concept. I think it's called If Opera, and it is, they want to effectively create almost a repertory company where you will have singers, musicians, set designers, etc., employed at proper living wages. And they will be ensemble players. For instance, I met at the opera evening at the Belcome Court one of the stars of the previous production, which was Die Fledermaus, and he was in the ensemble. So they keep on switching. As long as somebody has the ability, they will star in something, and then they will be an ensemble player in something else. But I have to tell you, the Lucia was absolutely wonderful. I mean, I'm familiar with the performances of Maria Callas and Joan Sutherland, who were the definitive Lucias. And this girl was absolutely wonderful, and I'm going to make sure that I read out things properly. So, and the script is very, very faint. So, Lucia was Robin Allegra Parton. Wonderful Lucia, wonderful voice. I mean, she did the mad scene magnificently with just the right combination of pathos and joyousness and insanity. Brilliant. Edgardo was Angel Macias, who was absolutely wonderful as well. Then there was Enrico. All of them, I have to tell you, were really excellent. Was Alexei Gusev. Arturo was Edward Leach. Elisa was Bethany Horak Hallett. Raimondo was William Melnott. And Normano was Paul Kurievici. There was also the most delicious food created by Michael Volpe and a wonderful chef from Portobello in London. Absolutely delicious food. It was a magical, magical evening. Of course, I couldn't photograph the event itself because I was in too prominent a seat to photograph anything until the absolute end, when it didn't matter. And the evening was sponsored by some wonderful people, including Lysets, who insure this castle and many of the others great stately homes of this country. Amanda Harmon asked me, she organized the whole thing for me, and it was a magical, magical evening. So I'm going to do a photograph of Amanda and me with the beautiful, absolutely beautiful setting in the background. And then we will have a photograph of Amanda with Michael Volpe and Amanda with Paul Wayland. Okay, so here goes. So now we plunge in with Leslie Akoka, who says, "Dear Lady C, the Sun is claiming Harry attended Lord Fellowes' funeral alongside William in order to unite in grief in Diana's honour." Quotes, quotes. Lord Fellowes was not, I understand, a fan of Diana. Please explain. Delighted to do so, my dear. Delighted to do so. No, he certainly was not a fan of Diana. He was outraged that when he began to suspect that Diana had cooperated with the Morton book, he was outraged after she gave him her solemn assurance that she had nothing to do with the book, that it turned out that she had had a lot to do with the book. And he offered the Queen his resignation, and the Queen refused to accept it. Now, Robert Fellowes' father worked on the Sandringham estate. He was the factor on the Sandringham estate, or the land agent, I think he might have been, as opposed to the factor. But anyway, whatever, he was one or the other, or both. And so Robert Fellowes was actually a Sandringham boy from birth. Now, let's not forget that Diana was born on the Sandringham estate. Her parents lived on the Sandringham estate in Park House. So Jane, her sister, married the local boy. And he had a stellar career as the Queen's assistant, then deputy, then his private secretary. And Harry and William did not unite in grief in Diana's honour. Their Aunt Jane has been very supportive of them, both, as indeed was Robert Fellowes. Now, my understanding is that Lord Fellows was actually a really decent man. For instance, after his retirement, he ended up doing something with the prisons. And he was of the opinion that prisoners should be given the right to vote because it otherwise would distance them from society, while if they stood a chance of not being recidivists, they would need to feel that they were a part of society generally. You could say he was compassionate. Now, the Spencer family is interesting because if you do not understand the historical context in which the Spencers have functioned for the last 300 years or so, yeah, actually 300 years, because the first Lady Diana Spencer was born in 1710, and when she was still a teenager, her grandmother, Sarah, Duchess of Marlborough, who was the widow of the great John Churchill, who became the Duke of Marlborough and was the hero of Blenheim, etc., etc. And she had been a great friend of Queen Anne. Well, by this time, Queen Anne was dead, and Frederick, Prince of Wales, was alienated from his father, who was King George II. He reigned from 1727 to 1760, if I remember correctly. And George I reigned from 1714 to 1727. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And I'm not going to check it, sorry. Sarah Marlborough conceived the idea that her favourite granddaughter, who was Lady Diana Spencer, the daughter of the Earl of Sunderland and Sarah's daughter, Lady Anne Churchill. She was the youngest of their children, and both her parents had died, and her grandmother was bringing her up, and she was the apple of her grandmother's eye. And Sarah, Duchess of Marlborough, offered to pay off Frederick, Prince of Wales's debts to the tune of £100,000, which is a vast sum of money in those days, as well as a dowry on top of that of another £150,000. So he was being bribed to marry her granddaughter secretly. And this was before the Royal Marriages Act. So it would have been a valid marriage. And Horace Walpole, the Prime Minister of the day, got wind of it and stopped the marriage. And he organised Frederick's marriage to a German princess. But that was the beginning of the Spencers and the Spencer Churchills' ambitions to be a part of the British royal family. It took a long time. It took for the next Diana, named after her predecessor, who ended up being the Duchess of Bedford and died aged 25 of tuberculosis, leaving no issue. The new Diana Spencer and the old Diana Spencer, if I can put it like that, were bookends with various Spencers who were mistresses of various members of the royal family. I cover this in my Diana books. So for 250 years, more actually, a bit over 250 years, the Spencers had an ambition to be linked legally and officially, as opposed to illegitimately, with the royal family. And Diana realized the dream. Now, where this is important is in terms of William and Harry and the Spencer family's relationship with William and Harry. The Spencers have traditionally, like many of the grand aristocrats, had a combination of hauteur and sucking up where the royal family is concerned. They and families of their ilk were very grand, irrespective of the royal family, but they've always revered their royal connections. I think if Harry were photographed on, well, let me rephrase that. I think if any progeny of the Spencers and the royals that was legitimate was an axe murderer, they would still love him unreservedly. The only one who did not love either of those boys unreservedly was their grandmother, Ruth Fermoy, who also didn't love her granddaughter. So actually, Ruth was their great-grandmother. She also did not love her granddaughter, Diana, Princess of Wales, unreservedly. She would have nothing to do with Diana once Diana's antics started. But the rest of the family has given both those boys unconditional love. Now, you could say it's noble, and I certainly would not be criticizing anybody who behaves with noble actions, irrespective of their motives. But there is a school of thought that snobbishness has a lot to do with it. Whether that is true or not is not something I am prepared to say. But this is the opinion of people who know the family. So don't be surprised that Harry and William were both at Robert Fellows's low-key rural family and local friends memorial service. It wasn't the funeral, it was the memorial service, I am informed. The boys arrived and left separately, and they didn't exchange a word. William studiously avoided even a glance in Harry's direction. But Harry, I am informed, on more than one occasion, was glancing over at William, doubtless in the hope that William will ultimately re-embrace him. Of course, he and Meghan have demanded an apology from the royal family. But I can tell you something, if William were dumb enough to not learn the lesson that he has definitely learned, I'm assured of, from Harry's conduct, and decided he was going to embrace Harry Harry would be there quicker than you can say boo, especially now that Harry and Meghan are systematically failing in the US. And all the puff pieces that Us Weekly and all those rubbish magazines keep on coming up with, reinforcing the impression of success when there is nothing but the stench of failure about them. So I hope that answers the question. And Robert Fellows was definitely not a fan of Diana's. And Jane was not speaking to Diana when she died. She violently disapproved, I am told, of Diana's conduct, as did their grandmother, Ruth Fermoy. She had completely turned her back on her granddaughter Diana. So I hope that answers the question. Kelly BQ 2RQ says, as a licensed clinical mental health counselor here in America, I can tell you that BetterUp is considered an unethical, toxic organization. Don't believe me? Look at the employee reviews. I know someone personally who worked there, and it was a nightmare for them. Oh, Kelly, that's so disappointing. There I was trying to get everybody who's associated with Castle Goring to join BetterUp and to get mentored and coached in BetterUp's way of doing things. And then they could have graduated to being taught by the Professor Harry, Duke of Sussex. Rather like going to the podiatrist when you need brain surgery. No put down to podiatrists either, because they're more skilled than Harry. Harry only passed worms at school, nothing else. Even his passage, and I use the word in its true meaning, in art was more illusory than real, according to his art mistress. BU says, Dear Lady C, the Western Australian Premier was approached in July for Hazard and Rash El Ragland to visit in October too. It's a matter of public record. Well, that's very interesting, because Harry and Meghan have obviously been desperate to find a platform and a venue that would allow them to compete with the King and Queen's visit to Samoa and Australia. And of course, give them lots of attention, because these are real attention junkies. Well, it didn't work, did it? And my understanding is that the Indian royals want to have absolutely nothing to do with Harry and Meghan. Let's see, because the Indian royals aren't going to be impressed with the bag of rotten fruit or the donation of 3 lavatory bowls, all used and cracked. They're not. Francia Marquez from Colombia. Miss Fish and Chips says, in my opinion, a strategic parent in a powerful position at the head of the family business would find a way to shut down a renegade family member, and especially his hussy wife, playing them at their own game. Unfortunately, such a parent wouldn't have allowed it all to go as far as it has, and therein lies the problem. Just my opinion. It was probably the Queen who was also too soft, fearful of outcomes. It's tragic for the Queen. Harry and his wife probably exacerbated the poor health and cancer of Queen Elizabeth, the King and the Queen in waiting. The stress must have been enormous. The stress was enormous. Queen Elizabeth II understood that if she did not play a canny hand, that Harry and Meghan would taint her legacy within the Commonwealth. And that was, I am advised, at the back of her mind when she formulated the no half in, half out, but let's give them enough rope to hang themselves with. Because she was aware that Meghan was a race baiter and Harry had become a race baiter himself, which they have proven to be. You notice, neither Harry nor Meghan has yet tried to revoke amid scabies claims about Charles and Catherine being racist. But I do not actually agree with you when you say that the powerful head of a family business would find a way to shut down a renegade family member, playing them at their own game. No. If you are in such an important position, you not only have to be seen to have clean hands, you have to have clean hands. Sorry, you cannot play grifters at their own game, because that means you are adopting the conduct of a grifter and superseding him and or her or both in their grifting abilities or their treacherous activities and abilities. I mean, there are many words you can use to describe the totally bizarre and totally treacherous and unacceptable conduct to which Meghan and Harry have treated the world in the last few years. I'm sorry. You do not, I'm going to use an analogy. It's just an analogy. You do not solve the problems of theft by becoming a bigger thief yourself. You don't play them at their game and beat them at it. You play them at a different game. You play them at your game. You have to come up with a game that will hopefully, ultimately stymie them and allow them to expose themselves in all their inglorious nakedness, which is precisely what the family has done. It's taken long. It's very frustrating for many people who want an immediate solution. But sorry, I think you are absolutely wrong, Miss Fish and Chips, and I I know you because I have seen many of your comments and read out quite a few. So thank you for this, but no. And the stress has been enormous, but the stakes are so high, as Meghan herself commented, that they have not been able to afford to sully their hands. They have had to play a long game and a clean-handed game. Also, sometimes you solve a problem and you create a bigger problem for yourself down the line, unless you are very careful how you handle a situation. So I make that point as well for what it's worth. The best way to deal with renegades who are destructive and trying to destroy you is to allow them to expose themselves. You don't beat them at their own game. You beat them at your game, and the name of your game has got to be exposure. And how you go about it also dictates whether you will end up garnering the respect that you need to survive. Sister Pacifica says, "Thank you, Lady C, for another fantastic show. Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it. Like many others have already stated, you do look lovely today." I don't know when that was. Sorry. Oh, must have been day before yesterday. Thank you, nevertheless. Could have been yesterday. I'm sorry. I don't know. Could have been 3 days ago. Anyway, thank you. I have so many questions for you, but this particular one has been nagging at me. In one of your shows, you mentioned that voodoo, it was in reference to the famous Nigerian trip, doesn't work on Jamaicans. I do believe this was said in jest. However, there did seem to be an element of fact behind it. Do you mind explaining this? Thank you so much. Our whole household enjoys your show, your books, and your precious fur babies. Godspeed to you, and to you too, Sister Pacifica. Jamaicans have a very potent form of voodoo called obeah. There's also Pocomania, which is another form of voodoo, I suppose you'd say. I'm Jamaican, and I can tell you they could dip chicken feathers in the blood of a slain cock till they're blue in the face, and hoping it would get up and crow thrice, twice, or once is beside the point. And that it was going to mean that their magic would work on somebody like me. It doesn't. There is a category of Jamaican that is totally impervious to obeah, Pocomania, or voodoo. I've known this from I was a child, because obeah and Pocomania, especially obeah, were pervasive throughout the society, primarily amongst the lower orders, to put it in the old-fashioned words. Now, in those days, to be a member of the lower orders was to be very deprived and disadvantaged. So you can well see why people would have resorted to desperate measures to try to improve their lives or even pay back someone, because a lot of the time they were quite powerless. Well, as everybody who knows Jamaica knows, they certainly acquired power, not in terms of obeah, but in terms of physical power and the manifestations of physical power, including the misuse of that power. And Jamaica is now quite a different country from the country that I was born into and grew up in. And the society has changed dramatically. So I cannot with any certainty speak about present-day Jamaica, but I can certainly speak about the Jamaica that I grew up in. And the obeah worked if you believed it was going to work. If you knew it wasn't going to work, they could jump up and down all they wanted and go, whoa! Because I gather that's what they do, and drink stuff and go, maybe it was ayahuasca, or the Jamaican version of it. Ayahuasca, ayahuasca, ayahuasca. I am Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. Actually, maybe he should have been asked a Pocomania meeting in Jamaica. That might have helped him. Well, actually, stop to think. There are people who say that he has been the victim of obeah, or I think it's actually called Santeria, but we're not going to go there. We're going to leave it all hanging. To answer the question, yes, obeah and voodoo and Pocomania don't work with people who know it's rubbish and don't believe in it. However, if you have any doubt, because you see how it works is you're told that you have a hex on you. That's supposed to frighten you. Oh, I quiver and quake in my boots. I think you got the message. Susan Gallen says, people mistakenly compare the French Revolution to the American Revolution. The American Revolution was truly about liberty, freedom. The French Revolution, often described as the genesis of communism, primarily focused on egalitarianism. Those are very important distinctions, Susan Gallen, and I'm glad you brought them up. The American Revolution, or the American War of Independence, was about the 13 colonies in the New World. No taxation without representation. In fact, if you are an assiduous student of history, you will know that the American colonists were taxed at a far lower rate and had far greater services than their British counterparts. That's right. People in Britain were taxed at a far higher level and had far less to show for it than in the American colonies. But the Americans wanted to break away, and they broke away. So yes, it was about, I would say, self-determination. Self-determination. Because really, the American colonists were pretty free. I mean, really. And as I said, they enjoyed far more privileges than their British counterparts. So, but the French Revolution, and you're absolutely right, it was about egalitarianism. It was a precursor to what then became communism and egalitarianism is a fallacy. The most you can aim for is equality of opportunity. People should be able to be educated. People should be able to be given opportunities to flourish, and they should then flourish under their own initiative. But that is not very compatible with a nanny state, because people are often rewarded not for their strengths, but for their weaknesses, and not for their initiative, but for their inertia. Now, I'm in favor of people who need to be assisted, but deadbeats for 3 and 4 generations. Why should I work? And I work very hard. Why should I work? And sometimes go to bed at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not complaining, by the way. I love my work. And as I've always said to my children, one of the great secrets to life is to find work that you enjoy, and thereafter your life will be assured of being a pleasure. Well, if you don't have work that you enjoy and your aim is pleasure, pleasure becomes very hard work. I've seen it. I saw it with my mother. I've seen it with loads of other people. I've seen it with overprivileged people. And I've seen it with deadbeats who, for several generations, can't be bothered to bestir themselves and are on the dole, and they do not care about themselves. They don't care about their duty to themselves. To hell with what they care about where anybody else is concerned. Let's not even go there. Because if you don't care about yourself, how can you possibly genuinely care about others? And so, yes, but you're absolutely right. The French Revolution was about egalitarianism, and French culture is still, to an extent, about everybody being as equal as possible. And I'm afraid I am not equal to anybody else, and nobody else is equal to me. Some people are shorter than me, some people are taller than me, some people have longer hair, some people have shorter hair, some people have X while I have Y. The whole business of equality is just ridiculous. It is a false doctrine. That's not to say that I don't believe in a fair society and a good civilization. And let's not forget, for all of the criticism that we have about the present day world, civilization has never had more people having more benefits and a better standard of living and more freedoms than they have at this present time. The fact that all of this is being endangered by people who don't appreciate the advances we've made, and in their greed want to create more advances that are impossible to achieve. And alternatively, politicians who want to use the often misguided notions of people who are not sufficiently well informed as to actually appreciate that they're being led down false paths. These are huge concerns in our society at the moment. But it's up to each of us to do our bit. And if it turns out that it's been to no avail, at least we tried. But I hope that we will continue on the path that we have taken as a society, which is the betterment of everybody wherever possible. But to be better means you also have to make sacrifices. AP 9047 says, Dear Lady C, do you anticipate that Megadusa will publish her own memoir in an attempt to further tarnish the royal family? This week in the United States, Meghan made the cover of a tabloid called Us magazine, and the quote next to her very airbrushed photo said she is ready to move on from being the sorry. the scapegoat of the royal family. You talk about projection. This cover story, coupled with her thinly veiled threat on CBS Good Morning with Jane Pauley, where Meghan claims she has barely scratched the surface of what she could say, all seem to indicate she isn't done with the blame game. Should we buckle up for more crocodile tears? One tear left eye. About her 72 days in the royal family that she continues to cling to for relevancy. Well, yes, this magazine article has been brought to my attention, and it is just farcical. And of course, she's got new friends who, of course, she's exploiting. Two successful women who she's befriended because she believes in female empowerment. One act of seduction at a time, yes. And Megsy Baby's very seductive. I need. Need and want, Meghan, are two different things. However, she uses the word need when she means want. As with everything with her, it's a two-pronged approach. On the one hand, they're planting stories that they want to make up with the royal family. And I understand that Harry was making goo-goo eyes in William's direction at Lord Fellow's memorial service. But to no avail. But on the other hand, they have stood by everything negative. The only thing that Harry did was he denied that Meghan had actually accused the family of racism. Then, since then, he's gone quiet when their mouthpiece amid scabies accused Charles and Catherine of racism. I put nothing past her, and she's not sufficiently wise or sophisticated or mature or evolved to understand that the games she has been playing are self-defeating. So, will she come out with a memoir? I'm sure if she felt there was capital to be obtained out of it, she would do it without the slightest compunction. This, remember, is a woman who, after 36 years of being indulged by her loving father, abandoned him when he had 2 heart attacks and has stood by as he has begged and pleaded with his baby girl to please, 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 let me back into your life. Impervious. So, that is a woman who has a heart of stone. And she is a professional victim, but then people who have antisocial aspects to their personalities always are professional victims. At the very moment that they're scapegoating you, they're accusing you of scapegoating them. Everything is cockeyed with them. And we're going to end with Thracian Grapes, who says, Meghan Markle is very jealous of her sister Samantha for these reasons. 1, Samantha is white. At 5'10", she is 7 inches taller than Meghan Markle. Well, officially 3 or 4, but you think 7. It's fine. And more attractive, a natural blonde. Samantha is popular and equally as famous as Meghan Markle. I wouldn't have said she was equally as famous, Thracian Grapes. But the rest of it, I think, yeah. Samantha is popular amongst thinking people. Megulia is popular amongst unthinking people. So, but Meghan is definitely more famous. Well, maybe the word is infamous, but Meghan is definitely better known than Samantha. Meghan, say what you will about her, she has pulling power because she is so lustful for attention. And when you are as famous as Meghan is, or Diana was, or Elizabeth Taylor was, it's not accidental. You actually invited and orchestrated as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the media constantly, because that's not how fame works. And no matter which very famous person you take, they are not consistently in the news on a daily basis. Nobody, unless they set out to achieve that objective. 2, Samantha had a career in the entertainment industry before she got MS and became wheelchair bound, well before Meghan Markle was an adult. 3, Samantha is a licensed therapist and has 2 degrees, radio and entertainment and clinical psychology, which Meghan Markle lacks. Meghan failed her externship at Northwestern. May I say that I have spoken to Samantha at considerable length, and I do think she has a far finer mind than Meghan. That's scant praise, I know, because Meghan doesn't have a fine mind. But it's not intended to insult Samantha. It's intended to show the contrast between the two. Samantha gave birth to 3 gorgeous children. Meghan Markle's children may not even exist at all. They are highly suspected of being surrogates. That's your opinion and you're entitled to it. Certainly, Meghan's conduct has raised questions, and if you wish to have that opinion, you are fully justified in doing so legally. 5, Samantha has become a celebrity accidentally just because she is Meghan Markle's sister. Meghan Markle resents this fact immensely. She certainly does. She absolutely, I am informed, boils at the idea that any of her family has any attention. And what she doesn't seem to understand is the only reason why she has attention is because she allied herself with Harry. So she's a second-hand merchant, as are they. But she thinks she's, I'm just gorgeous and I'm fabulous. And, you know, I'm just naturally gifted and it's all about me. And I'm entitled to all of this because I'm so special. But she's not special. But so they're all actually second-hand merchants, for want of a better word. And that's just the reality. Not one of them has actually achieved in the sense of productivity. Meghan achieved a bit in terms, I'm speaking about in terms of fame, by the way. Meghan didn't achieve fame as an actress. She achieved some success, but she wasn't famous. So all their fame is accidental, I suppose you could say, yeah. So let me continue reading. Meghan resents this fact immensely. Yes, she does. So have Meghan Markle's brother, father, and other blood relatives. Meghan Markle doesn't want to share her success, her joy, her glory, her notoriety with anybody else. She wants it all. Yes, that's right. There's not room in the world for anybody else to consume any of the attention Meghan demands for herself. That is classically narcissistic. My mother was like that. She absolutely cringed if anybody else got attention. She was sufficiently well brought up that she would allow it for the absolute maximum time that she could endure allowing it, which was usually very short. And Meghan is the same. It's classical narcissism. And I am going to end with a wonderful, wonderful cause that has been set up by some friends of mine and is organized by a wonderful young man who has done a little bit of an internship here at the castle. His name is Ashen Carer, and it's called Kids Out, the Fun and Happiness Charity, Reaching for the Stars, organized by Ashen Carer. Reaching for the Stars, and I'm going to get this posted. I'm not going to read out the rest of it. I'm going to get this posted, and anybody who wishes to, if they can donate anything, I'm certainly going to donate. It is the most wonderful, wonderful charity, the most wonderful cause, and I will post it and we see. Okay? Thank you so much. Godspeed. Thanks for listening. Take good care. And remember, keep the questions and comments coming in. God bless. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and see you soon. Bye-bye.